Who was the man behind the metal mask, and what was the Order of St. Lazarus? That's what we're here to talk about on this episode of It Belongs in a Museum. I'm the guy who did the research,
I'm the person who's just kind of here for the ride and vaguely knows what the topic is.
and we're going to be talking about lepers in the Crusades today. Before we can get into the leper king, let's go in chronological order, which would be the Order of St. Lazarus. So, here's what I found when I was doing my research on it. The Order of St. Lazarus was founded in the 1130s, which is kind of just a weird thing to say out loud instead of like 1930s, 1830s, like 1130s. That's a long time ago.
Yeah,
It was founded in Jerusalem as it originally meant to tend to lepers, but developed a militant branch.
of course.
They held lands in France, England, Spain, and Central Europe.
This,
And
sound, this sounds like a group in Dark Souls too.
according to a 2018 article, they still exist as a non-denominational knightly order of it's a ecumenical order of chivalry is their way of saying it doesn't matter your denomination. They'll allow Protestants and Catholics all to serve in the knightly order of men who I presume do not have leprosy, given that we have had cures and treatments for it since the
Yeah,
1940s.
I mean, don't antibiotics cure it?
We're going to get into leprosy in general as a little side tangent as well. The knights fought famously in the Siege of Acre, which is a big deal for anyone who knows the Crusades or history. In 1608, King Henry IV of France took over, um, and he instilled a rule of his own members of the French royal family to take over the Order of Saint Lazarus. So his royal family took over, but then the French Revolution happened.
It would have been weird if they had brought in the Order of St. Lazarus to fight. Because presumably, at that point, are they lepers still?
Well, so
Like,
let's get into the leprosy real quick. So leprosy is also called Hansen's disease. It's a bacteria-based disease, and it affects the skin, nerves, respiratory system, and the eyes. It's actually not highly contagious, which I always thought like if you bumped into a leper and your skin
yeah, that
touched.
was like a huge thing in the old days. They thought it was like super
No,
contagious.
it's only really spread through prolonged exposure through respiratory droplets because of the bacteria that you're inside of you.
Oh.
Yeah. So as long as they were wearing a face mask, you would have been fine. Even today, if you told someone you had leprosy, they would not want to sit next to you.
Yeah, it's like it's such a baffle.
But yeah, in the 1940s, we had our first treatment for it called Dapsone, although it required a lifetime of taking it, and eventually there were strains of leprosy that were resistant to it. And in 1981, the real cure, called DMT therapy, which is a broad spectrum antibacterial treatment, was proven to be a legitimate do it and you don't have leprosy anymore. And so, yeah. So the fact that you could still join the order, at least as of 2018, was the last article I found on it.
How does joining a knightly order work in an age where guns exist?
I mean, it's not like you actually still wear knight's armor. It's like the Freemasons.
Oh,
I mean, there
so
could
it's
be differences.
so it's boring now.
Well, I don't know. I'm not part of it. Okay, hi, this is us from the future. I discovered more about that question about the Order of St. Lazarus, so I wanted to splice this in. Um, I want your reaction.
Okay, so
So
I have no idea what's going on.
this is the official page of the Military and Hospitaller Order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, Grand Priory of the USA. These are the outfits they wear.
A lot of yeah, that's kind of what I was picturing.
They kind of look like a sinister choir.
Yeah, they a lot of old people in
They are a
robes.
private association of the faithful and a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization because nothing says crusade era organization like tax exemptions.
Okay.
This is the official description of them on their website. Knights, dames, and chaplains. The Order of St. Lazarus is the only Catholic order in the world which admits non Catholic members. As an order of chivalry, the Order of St. Lazarus has retained the virtues of nobility, but today its members are drawn from across the social spectrum. As Christians, they are inhabited by the nobility of spirit, which is illustrated in their conduct and self sacrifice, and probably a lack of leprosy. The order has retained its traditional moral values, such as the spirit of service, sacrifice, and discipline, which still characterizes the knights today. Battles are no longer with the sword. The modern battle is fought in the struggle against disease, poverty, exclusion, and intolerance, and by promoting and defeating the faith,
Oh, that actually sounds
or
like
defending the faith, rather. Thanks to its members and volunteers, the Order of St. Lazarus engages in charity work around the world, helping thousands of sick, suffering, and needy. The Order of St. Lazarus works daily for a better world, and again, probably does not have any leprosy.
it's like on its own sounds like, yeah, that's great. That's like a lovely sounds like a lovely organization. The fact that it is not just based on, but is successor to what was Crusaders.
It's strange, right? I like that they've kept their swords and their like they're all it's charity work, but you get to be dressed up dramatically. It's like you get to dress up like like a medieval character, but also go like help in a soup kitchen.
It's like a toga party mixed with a search party.
To be honest, I do think more charities would benefit with more membership and more donations if they were like, if you donate, you get a pretty cape.
I mean,
And
I mean, if there was a charity that was like, if you donate to us, we will honorarily knight you.
yeah, I mean that's cool. Like
Yeah.
imagine it's like, oh, this is our she handles our bake sales. This is Dame Margaret. Like it makes you sound and feel cooler.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found this and I wanted to include this because I thought it was fascinating. Anyway, back to prior us. Anyway, let's talk about Baldwin the Fourth, known as the Leper King. This is the source of all of those memes from the Kingdom of Heaven with Ed Norton playing the character. But he was a real historical figure, born in 1161, lived until 1185.
The year of our Lord.
I mean, have you asked the Catholics? Yes. So Baldwin was unloved by his birth mother and ignored by his stepmother. He was sent to study at a young age with William of Tyre, a well-educated cleric. However, while staying where William was teaching everyone, William noticed that when the little boys were teasing Baldwin on the playground, he didn't cry when they were pinching him. He soon realized Baldwin could not feel pain in his right arm.
Okay.
So
But
leprosy was suspected at this point, but there were no outward symptoms to prove it.
So he couldn't feel in his right arm.
Couldn't feel pain, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, so because William saw that this kid wasn't feeling pain, but he didn't have any outward signs of leprosy, he hired the Muslim doctor Abu Sulaym. Oh my god, my penmanship is bad in this notebook.
Just call him Little John after the movie Robin Hood.
Abu Suleiman Dawad to treat Baldwin. And while he was being treated and looked at, William saw to it that Baldwin would be trained in how to ride a horse because he'd need to as a statesman, he's the heir to the throne, and for war, like you have to be able to do that. But without the feeling in his right arm, he mastered horse riding by using only his knees to guide the horse.
Okay.
Because, you know, he still had feeling in both of his legs and everything. Although towards the end of his life, he did lose feeling in his legs.
How much of this podcast is basically going to be like that scene in John Wick when they're like, you don't understand. He's the guy you sent to kill the boogeyman.
Oh, this dude was legitimately great. Even people who were not of the Catholic faith are like, you know, he was a pretty cool guy.
Did he get sainthood? Seemingly.
So I'll jump to this part because there is a quote from the Pope. Pope Alexander III said that King Baldwin's leprosy was a just judgment from God. So he had the religious community split down the middle on how to feel about him. Anyway, so
okay, can we honorarily give him sainthood?
I mean, I don't think we have the power to make that decision.
We could do that.
So he wasn't diagnosed immediately, even though there was a high level of suspect, because Dawad knew that it would carry a stigma with it and potentially require by law that he join the Order of St. Lazarus.
Okay, so yeah, just to Order of St. Lazarus is a thing, and it's a thing you don't want to join.
Well, not if you aren't sure you have it, and if you're a royal and you're a little kid, they were like looking out for the kid.
Yeah.
They're like, but here's the thing. Until he started showing signs of leprosy, he was described as a handsome, charismatic, physically fit royal whose only outward issue was an occasional stutter. They said he took on the fitness and the looks of his father.
Huh.
He's the type of guy who could strut into a room and everyone would be drawn into his conversation, apparently.
All right, so right now I'm picturing a Rebel Moon actor.
Oh, Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah, I'm picturing Charlie Hunnam for playing this character.
You must be thinking of King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
I mean, I'm getting that vibe.
Baldwin's tutors praised his memory, saying he never forgot either a kindness or a slight done to him by others. His father, King Almeric, died, and there was a 3-day meeting among the High Council to see whether or not Baldwin would be taken in, because although there was no confirmation of leprosy, there was a very strong belief he did have it. And so basically they said, you can do it, but we're going to find a suitable husband for your sister so that when she gets married, they can take over the crown. And Baldwin's like, that's great. I don't particularly want this because obviously I've got some physical things going on. And so he wasn't seeking power. He wasn't seeking glory. He was very level-headed. And in fact, his Crusader state was famously successful in economic wealth and spiritual community, because he hired and he had very well suited leadership. He would find someone to handle finances, to handle everything, who was just good enough to do it without him, but then he would still manage over them. But the idea was he didn't know when his last day was on this earth, so he just kept finding competent people. And instead of it being nepotism hires, which was kind of the go-to back then, and still is to this day if you think about it,
Yeah.
it led to a shockingly, comparatively successful run of politics. Let's see. While Baldwin ruled, his kingdom never lost any land. And this during the Crusades.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to say, just in general, that's, not easy.
No, it's not easy in general, but during the Crusades, in fact, that's something else worth noting. I have it written further down in my notes. He was beloved at the time, but some people say that he was potentially beloved, especially because of the stability he brought after the failure of the Seventh Crusade. So some Muslims were really confused why this leper was being venerated, because they're like, he has leprosy, you know that, right? And in fact, some of the people around the time were sort of like, I don't understand. They're really happy with him. They want to keep him in power, and they don't seem at all bothered by the fact that he has leprosy. They were like, these Christians are crazy. But a great thing about what he did is that his success and charisma led to a destigmatization of leprosy and lepers in general, and led to a sort of veneration of give money to the Order of St. Lazarus and be kind to those of you who are sick, because here's this very charismatic man who is a wordsmith, he walks with authority despite not being able to feel most of his extremities in his later life, and eventually going blind.
Spoilers.
Let's see. The fall of his kingdom 2 years after his death led to the people who were living at the time to think less favorably about him, because they blamed the fall on him, but in reality it was just that he couldn't find a age-appropriate heir to take over the throne.
So,
because he actually wanted to have his sister's husband take over, but a year after his sister got married, her husband died, and so he couldn't take over. So he kept being like, someone else can take my job, and no one else was any better or alive enough to do it. And on top of that, 2 years after his death, with the fall of his kingdom, there was, due to King Philip of France's immense debt to the Templar order, he claimed heresy upon the Templars so he wouldn't have to pay his debts, and led to the imprisonment and hunting of all Templars throughout France and their allied territories. meaning the Templars and his king, like a lot of the people that would have looked up to Baldwin in that era were scattered to the winds or vilified. And it's only recently, or I guess not really recently, but as historians who are not presently dealing with the socioeconomic and geopolitical issues of their era, historians look back on him and see a king who led selflessly in spite of his illness and disabilities, and as a rare sign of a good man, a good royal, no less, in a time full of death, greed, and despair. And that
So,
is King Baldwin.
so did he ever join the Order of
No, he
Mercy?
was a king and then he died. And his tutor actually fell out of political favor, and no one's quite sure when he died because he was so unimportant to the royals and Catholic Church that no one kept track of when he passed away and died, despite being a large reason that King Baldwin was at all qualified to do anything that he did for his kingdom.
Hmm.
So I guess even back then, politics were pretty horrible. Reality is stranger than fiction, and that's why I believe that, if we were
But
putting
does Lazarus belong in a museum?
if we were putting together some type of museum, let's say for Illinois Jackson, some type of professor of history, and he was like, I need a plaque for that corner. I think the Order of St. Lazarus and King Baldwin, it does belong in a museum.
Yeah, you could have his weird face mask from the movie or something. I don't
I
know.
mean, I think we
Did,
should base it on historical artifacts
did he
instead.
actually have like a face mask?
Do you think that the king wanted to look like a decrepit monster?
Okay, then get like I'd say at least a recreation of his armor.
Yeah, like an approximation based on what historians believe was accurate to the time. That would be ideal.
Yeah, there was.
Maybe don't ask. I think it was a Ridley Scott movie, was Kingdom of Heaven, but
Yeah,
that's the beauty of history, is that we can sort fact from fiction and talk about these very real,
yeah,
cool things that transpired.
and that's like people will be like, actually, this source said none of us were there. We're doing the best research we can. That's kind of the point of history.
And if more information ever comes out on any of the topics we talk about, we'll happily revisit with that new information, because that's the beauty of science and history.
Yeah,
We're always learning.
yeah. I like the description that history and science, like the study of them, is just one long passive aggressive argument of like, good idea. Too bad you're wrong.
So, yeah, I do believe that King Baldwin, his legacy belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see what strange, weird, and wonderful things we talk about in the next episode.